What's up guys, it's Troy at The Full Setup back with another benchmark review. And I know it's been absolutely ages since I made one of these videos, so I thought, do you know what? Let's make this one a biggie. So today I will be benchmarking the GTX 1650 Super with the Ryzen 5 3600 in a whopping 25 games for you. I will be testing the games at 1080p with a mix of stock versus overclock settings for you. I will also be testing today's games at a mix of low, medium and ultra settings to see how many frames we can push in competitive multiplayer games. Now before we start with the review, I want to say a huge thanks to today's sponsor, Skillshare. Now I'm someone that truly believes you are never too young, old or busy to learn a new skill. Whether it's perfecting your latest hobby or learning new skills for your dream job, I truly believe if you want something from life, it's only yourself that's stopping you from getting it. But with the current global pandemic, achieving something for you may not seem possible at the moment. So if you feel uncertain about what's next, a creative challenge or productivity class will certainly help you fulfill a sense of accomplishment and hopefully break up what has become to myself a rather boring stay-at-home routine. Skillshare features over 20,000 classes and a community of millions of inspiring creatives and learners. Honestly, if you want to learn something, you can almost guarantee Skillshare has a class for you. Now I'm currently working my way through some Premiere Pro classes, and one thing I've really loved is the amount of tips and tricks videos. These are perfect for me when my work and YouTube life is reaching peak levels. I think you will all love what Skillshare has to offer, and they have kindly offered for the first 1,000 people to join via the link in the description 2 free months to their premium membership. This gets you access to all their classes, mobile downloads, and for many of their classes, project files so you can work along with the presenter of the video. Now after your 2 months has ended, Skillshare offers fantastic deals on their premium memberships with annual subscriptions costing less than $10 a month. You can find out more about Skillshare and how to get your 2 months free in the description below. One last thing before we start with the review, I currently have an international giveaway running for a Deepcool Gamax RGB CPU cooler. If you would like to enter, all you have to do is subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and then hop over to our Discord server. You will see a link in the description to the video to my Discord, and then all you have to do is leave a comment in the competition section on Discord and you're all entered. It's that easy. Anyway, review time. It's time to do the review. Gaming. I'm a little bit nervous. I haven't made one of these videos for ages. Anyway, so where would we normally start here? Test system. Yes, the test system. Okay, so as for the test system, I'm using the EVGA GTX 1650 Super XC Ultra Black with 4GB of GDDR6. Let me take a breather right there. That's a long name of a graphics card. Anyway. This model has a max boost rating of 1755 MHz, but as you can see on the screen here, look in the top left hand corner. Is it left hand? Yeah, left hand corner. And you can see that it actually boosts quite a lot higher. If you keep the graphics cards cool, they go way over for Nvidia cards anyway. Now, as for the CPU, I already mentioned I'm using the Ryzen 5 3600. Now, I'm running this at stock settings because it actually ends up getting 4.2 GHz, all core boost in games. Okay. 4.2 GHz. Now you can overclock it to 4.3, you know, a measly 100 MHz, but you have to dump a lot of voltage into it. Even with the big cooler that I've got in this system, I just can't be bothered with the voltage, and you're just not going to see any gains, and you're definitely not going to see any gains with this graphics card. As for the motherboard, I have the CPU plugged into an Asus X470 Prime Pro with 16GB of Team Dark Pro running at 3600 MHz, and I've set full manual sub timings for that as well. A bit overkill for pairing with this graphics card. 3200 MHz, you will probably end up getting the same results as what you're going to see on here on screen today. Anyway, that's the basics of the build. There's a full product specification list in the description for you. It's a lot of go look at the description in this video. Anyway, right, that part of the video is over. What would we normally do next? We're going to have a look at some stock versus overclock performance. As always, I like to go with something that you can all achieve at home, but there is a huge amount of headroom when overclocking the memory, so your mileage might, it might vary just a little bit. But there is also another link in the description to my GTX 1650 Super overclocking guide if you want to give that a try. Now, as for the core, I set this to plus 150 MHz. I was able to push it a bit further, but I can't remember which game it was, 1 or 2 games. I had some crashes at around 180 MHz, so I backed that down because I want it to work on all my games, not some. But I would recommend starting at 100 MHz for a core overclock. And then as for the memory, now the memory on this card is running at 12 gigabits per second, which is fast, but it's quite slow when you're talking about GDDR6. So I managed to add 1500 megahertz to the memory, which results in a 15 gigabits per second memory. So it's a big overclock on the memory. For Shadow of the Tomb Raider, we are running at high settings. Now at stock, we have a 1% low of 59 and an average of 72 frames per second. Overclocking results in an 8 frames per second gain, with 1% lows at 66 and averages of 80 frames per second. As for Gears of War 5, again at high settings, at stock we have 1% lows of 49 and an average of 66 frames per second. Once overclocked, we have a 1% low of 57 and an average of 75 frames per second, resulting in gains of 9 frames per second on average versus stock. Shadow of War also at high settings. With the GTX 1650 Super at stock, it results in 1% lows of 47 and an average of 68 frames per second. Now Shadow of War does always tend to be a game for me that seems to have the highest gains from any overclocking that I do to a GPU. 1% lows are up to 55 and the average is shot up to 80 frames per second, resulting in a 12 frames per second gain on average. Forza Horizon 4, now at ultra settings, results in stock 1% lows of 79 and average of 96 frames per second. Overclocking barely results in any gains, with 1% lows of 82 and averages of 100 frames per second. And finally, Far Cry New Dawn, again at ultra settings. For stock we have 1% lows of 58 and averages of 75 frames per second. Overclocking gains 8 frames per second on average, with 1% lows of 62 and average frame rates now at 85 frames per second. So there was the overclocking results. They're nothing huge, but you will find a nice boost in certain titles. And I'm sure a lot of you might be wondering why I tested some of those games at high settings and not ultra. Now I will explain my reasons for this in more detail at the end of the video. Now for the rest of the video, we will just be focusing on gameplay footage. So, I'll shut up for a minute. I'll just let the games do the talking. We can all see how bad I am at Battle Royale. You're about to see how bad I am at Battle Royale games. Yes, that is going to be very apparent after this very large benchmark review. But yeah, we're just going to focus on gameplay footage. You've obviously got the overlay so you can see all the statistics and how it's performing, and then I'm going to come back at the end of the video and sort of give my final thoughts on why I actually really like this graphics card, because I hated the standard 6050, but I really like the Super. And another thing you're going to notice as well, if you're looking up in the left hand corner, you're going to see the graphics card is still overclocked. I go through this in all my videos. I use Shadow Play to record. So we know we're going to lose, anywhere between sort of 3 and 8 frames per second from recording gameplay footage. But then obviously we're going to gain that from overclocking. So what you're actually seeing here on screen's probably closer to stock than it would be overclock results for you.
Supply box identified. Teammates in the gulag. If they survive, they should. Moving! Taking fire! I've got you! Target down! Moving! Losing ground! Enemy clear! UAV overhead. Your teammate has entered the gulag. Surviving earns them redeployment. Gas is closing in. Friendly loadout drop on the way.
Moving
intruder here.
You betcha. I couldn't beat you. I can. Where did you come from? Who is that? Strike him quickly!
Firing!
The Jedi! Okay, that's it. It's all over now.
Found you, intruder. That's our last ranged trooper.
On it. He's too scared. You won't escape. You and him.
Allied unit down. Head up.
Only gets better with age. I need healing.
Get in there, Bob.
I've got you in my sights. Impressive. Back in my day, we'd have this payload delivered already. Team, heal up here. Everyone, heal up.
Stop! Check it out!
Reloading.
Who shot?
Get some. Anybody else? Gas bag moving in.
What are you doing here? Ah! Thought you could get away!
Whole unit KIA. Damn, I'm good. Got a squad mate's banner. Hey. Good work. We're inside the next ring.
Care package being delivered.
Charging shields. Healing my wounds.
Attention. There is a new kill leader.
Giving him the chimney. New kill leader. Calling up the spot.
Taking fire.
Down to target. Reloading.
Care
Target
package.
spotted.
Incoming. Let's get to the LZ.
Making contact with enemy. Eyes up. Grenade. Reloading. Making contact with enemy. I'm taking fire. Grenade out.
Double timing it.
Reload. Rápido, rápido. Charging shields.
Down to target. Tango killed.
Head killed.
Down to target.
Reloading. They are not getting back up from that.
Reloading.
Alright! Okay, if we're gonna climb the ladder to the lead, we gotta get ourselves a race against another crew. Remember Kenny?
That redneck from my first night here?
His crew, the Speed Boys, are ripe for taking down. I'll pull whatever strings I can, but you gotta make yourself worth racing. Earn an invitation. Then we can make our mark.
Hostile control point detected.
Here they come.
There's still more mutated creatures out there. Please hunt them down, Prospector.
Kit has increased to match operator performance. Cycle spike imminent.
Into 4 left. Into 5 right. Into 4 left, don't cut. Into 3 right tightens. Into 5 left long, tightens 4. Into 4 right of a crest long, tightens.
getting dusty. We got the big guns.
That's it, Roach. Let's go. We have much work to do here. Quite a lot.
So there are the benchmarks. Congratulations, you've sat through what, 20 minutes plus of me playing games very badly. I don't get a lot of time to play games. I mean, making all these videos for the channel, that's my big hobby. I like to show you what performance you will get. I'm the sort of person that wants to help you build a PC, which means I get no time to play games for hours. It's the same, I do IT as a job during the day, so I'm pretty maxed out. So when I've got some free time, apart from playing some Battlefield, which I love, you know, I just don't get a lot of time. I find myself, if I'm actually going to play a game from start to finish all the way through, it will be on my Switch, because I'll be sat playing that in bed. I have been using GeForce Now a little bit of late. So, you know, that's made me play games a little bit more. So what you have to see is with these videos that I do, it's okay, it covers up for me being a bad player. I want to show you the performance and what you're going to get. And the 1650 Super is a graphics card that I really like. And when I did a mini review on this card, I said this is the first 5 series graphics card that I've rated since the 750 Ti. I didn't like the 950, I didn't like the 1050, and the 1050 Ti, it was okay. In fact, to be fair, some of my biggest benchmark reviews are on the 1050 Ti, but it wasn't for me, because when I bought it, you could actually get an RX 470 for about £20 more and get 40% more performance. Obviously, we had the sort of whole mining crisis, so it sort of made the 1050 Ti, the 1050 Ti got a lot more sales than it should have, really. And that was because of the GPU mining thing. That got a hell of a lot more sales than that graphics card should have got. But yeah, this is the one where I really like the performance. Like the 1650 was terrible. This card, I really enjoyed gaming on it. It's actually been in my system for about a month, and I haven't got any qualms with it. The only annoyance really is that I'm now isolated at my girlfriend's house, so the bulk of this footage was recorded on a 1440p display, well, a 2K monitor. And I don't care what anyone says. If you buy a 2K monitor because you want to use it for video editing or photos, something like that, but you also want to game a little bit, do not play at 1080p on it. It just looks blurred out. Like, I would much rather play at 2K medium settings, which actually this graphics card ran really well. I'm not saying go and buy it as a 1440p card, but it did. And that looks so much better playing at native resolution than it did at 1080p ultra settings. So yeah, I really do like this graphics card, and I sort of have to think, you know, would I buy it? You know, or well, not would I buy it, because I have bought one. I recommend you buying one. Yes, but I wouldn't spend more than £150 on one, because there's such a saturation in the graphics card market between £100 to £250, which we'll get to in a minute in another waffle. I do believe the RX 570 is better value, especially if you can get one close to £100. It is better value. Performs a little bit less than this, but that's just a case of dropping 1 or 2 settings that visually you're probably not going to notice, and then you get the same performance. The reason why I would buy this is because, you know, I like to do content creation. I used to like to stream a lot. It's something I'm going to get back into. For me, it's always been NVIDIA cards, because I don't like to use CPU encoding. I know we can get some very high core count CPUs now, but you're going to drop frames unless you're spending silly money or you've got a separate PC just for streaming. All the Turing based graphics cards, the 1650 didn't actually have it, which was one reason why I just 100% couldn't recommend it. But with the Super, they made sure they put the Turing video encoder, the HVenc encoder, and in OBS now that's almost on par with CPU. It's CPU encoding, and you literally lose like 5 frames. It's like just recording the footage that you've just seen. That is what you would get in a live stream. That big bulk of footage you've just seen is what you would get live streaming with this graphics card. Now, AMD's encoder has been trash, and it's been trash for a while. It's still okay. You could still do stuff with it. You could still stream with it, but yeah, it's just that little extra is why I would prefer it. I know there's obviously the used market as well. You could be thinking about, I wouldn't upgrade from anything like, from a 1050 Ti I would possibly upgrade. But anything more powerful than that, I wouldn't bother upgrading to this graphics card. But if you're on an older card, if you're on like a 960, the older like R9 series, and obviously not the 290, but like maybe the 290 actually, because it's quite power hungry. But that card is still going a bit strong for how old it is. But yeah, I definitely recommend this, but I wouldn't spend more than 150. And in fact, if I was buying a graphics card, I wouldn't shop between the 150 and £220 range. So that's like the RX 5500, which we know wasn't good enough anyway, but 2 very good cards from Nvidia, and I'm not trying to bash that card, and if you're thinking of buying one, that's your own decision, and they're not bad graphics cards. They're very good gaming cards, and that is the 1660 Super and the 1660 Ti, if you can find one somewhere. The reason is just because this card does enough for most people at 1080p settings. And I just feel if you're going to spend, for those cards, you're going to be ticking around the 200 to 220. If you decide you actually want one that's like pretty decent looking as well, you're going to be pushing almost 250 quid with those cards. You can buy a base 5600 with that and get so much more performance, just a really nice gain. Or you could buy an RTX 2060, so you can have some basic ray tracing, the Nvidia Turing encoder as well. And that's just why it's so saturated the market. I know I'm massively waffling on, but those two cards, I just feel like if you were gonna spend that much money, just spend an extra 20-30 pounds and get an all-round better graphics card. That's just where I'm at. But yeah, thoroughly enjoyed using this. It will probably be sat on the side now because my 2060 is back on, and it's been quite nice playing at 2K Ultra settings as well today. So what else do I need to cover that was in the video? Oh yeah, it's not, some geek's going to say this out. Troy, you only tested 24 games. Where's the 25th one? The 25th one was Destiny 2, because I didn't know it was free to play, so I thought I might as well download that and chuck it on. Realised that you can't use the River Tuner overlay on it, and it's got a built-in frame rate counter, but it's like super tiny, so I used the Nvidia one, which is super tiny but a little bit bigger. It didn't record it, so you're seeing some Destiny 2 footage on screen here. This is at maxed out settings. I can't remember what the frame rate was. It was definitely always over 60, sort of ticking around between 80 and 90. The odd little drops, but never really below 60, maxed out. And as you can see by the footage, it's pretty buttery smooth. What else do we need to cover? Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about why some of those games are at high settings. Now there's actually two reasons why those games are at high settings. So I'm going to tell you the first one because this is the one that's going to apply to you, and the second one is something that applies to me with the channel. So as you'll notice in Tomb Raider, Shadow of War and Gears of War 5, if you go back and have a look, is that they're all maxing out, they're pretty much all maxing out that 4GB VRAM. The available video memory that we have on the graphics card. That's probably the only negative point about this card. It would have been great if it was 6GB. And now Nvidia's VRAM allocation is very good, but one thing I sort of notice is when it starts to get maxed out, especially in like these big open world games with like huge textures, and as much as it can run at these higher settings and still have good frame rate, one thing that I notice happens a lot more is micro stutter. And that's one thing I used to say to a lot of people when it came to like the 3GB versus 6GB 1060. A lot of people used to say just buy the 3GB version, but the 3GB one did suffer from micro stuttering a little bit when that VRAM was getting maxed out. So that's one reason there. But this graphics card is a card, as we know, any sort of budget card is you're gonna have to drop settings. You can't max everything out. So you could set very high textures and then turn some other things down. And this comes on to why I don't do it for the channel. So let's just say on the 1650 Super, I set all of those at like ultra textures, but I turned other settings off and we sat around 70 frames per second. I'm just throwing numbers out there. And then we did the same with the 1660 Super, but we set everything to ultra and then it was the same frame rate. You would look at video A that I did of the cheaper card saying, why is it performing the same as video card in the B video? Okay, so that is why when I'm doing stock versus overclock performance, I always use a preset. You know, I do like to drop settings, as you can see there on Pubg. I like to play low, but I like the view distance set to maxed out. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, the volumetric clouds you could see was turned off because it really does tank the performance, and turning that off generally gets you from playing at high with good frame rates to playing at very high settings. So it is something that you are going to want to tweak, but that is the reasons that I ran those games at high settings. Tomb Raider, it's a little bit annoying because it's sat at 80 frames per second, but as soon as you start to max everything out, the frame rate obviously does drop, but then it's the micro stutter. It's the micro stutter that I didn't like. But you are going to want to tweak your settings, especially if you were going to pair this with like a 75Hz FreeSync monitor, because G-Sync is now supported on FreeSync monitors. Remember, you've got sort of a 48 to 75, but you don't really want to go up to 75. You want to be sat at about 72 because you don't want V-Sync to kick in. That's sort of where you want your FreeSync range to be. So you need to set up your card to always be performing in there. The fact is, most monitors that you're going to get, the 75Hz FreeSync monitors, they're not going to have that sort of, is it the frame rate compensation? So you're going to really have to tweak it to take advantage of that. It's another thing I've had to do on the 2K monitor for when I have been playing with FreeSync on, because it's only 75Hz. Waffling again, but yes, everyone's probably just left. Even my monitors have just turned off. They just went off. So yeah, that's just everything in the review. Really enjoyed it. Definitely go and, you know, check out Skillshare, link in the description. Check out the overclocking benchmark. I'm also going to be uploading extended footage of quite a lot of this stuff that you've seen on screen as well today. But that's it from me today. You know, you've probably heard my voice for long enough now. Any comments, anything you want to know, about this PC, let me know in the description. Go and check out Skillshare. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.
Losing objective aim.